Hello, and welcome to The Immigrant Show, the podcast for and with immigrants in the United States to share their immigration story, their integration path, and their American dream. I am your fellow immigrant and host, Anya. Hello and welcome to The Immigrant Show, the podcast for and with immigrants in the United States to share their immigration story, their integration path, and their American dream. Today's guest is Roman Prokopchuk, and he immigrated from the Ukraine in 1990 as a young boy and now lives on the East Coast. Welcome to the show, Roman. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you, Roman, for coming on. Tell us a little bit about your immigration story. When you came to the United States, what do you remember about coming to the United States? What your first feelings were that you remember as an immigrant to the United States?
Yeah, sure. I was 5 years old. So when I came over, Ukraine was still under the Soviet Union in 1990, and independence in 1992. And I came over with my mom, my dad, my brother, my grandparents, and my aunt, so 6 other family members. And to get to the United States from the Soviet Union, there was this weird process. 1, you needed a sponsor, and 2, you had to go through Vienna, Austria, and then Rome, Italy, and then come here. So I stopped in Vienna, Austria for a few weeks in Rome, and then we ended up here in New Jersey, and I've been in New Jersey ever since.
Oh, okay.
So, I was fairly young. Everything was obviously, we landed in New York, so everything was big, a lot of lights, so it was, overwhelming in that sense for a 5-year-old.
Before you came to the United States, and that was a long journey you made. It wasn't just hopping on the plane, landing in New York. Do you remember anything about your stops in between Vienna and Rome, or was it just a blur for you as a child?
Vienna, I don't remember that much. I mean, I've been back to different places in Europe after the fact. Rome, we were there a little longer, I think 1 or 2 months. So I remember the street we were on. I remember the stuff we did. I remember some of the city, so things like that, because it was a little longer and it was the place right before we came to the United States. So I remember some of that. I think my parents had the option to stay in Italy and settle there, but we ended up continuing and got here and stayed here ever since.
Okay, wonderful. On to your integration. I know it's been a long time ago. You were a child. Do you remember what the hardest step in your integration process was as a kid? What was the hardest for you? What stuck in your mind when you tried to interact with American kids, getting out into the American life or society?
So the main thing was the language. So I was 5, so I only spoke Ukrainian. Mm-hmm. So I was going to school. I went to kindergarten, and then till I believe end of 1st grade into 2nd grade, I had to take a class called ESL, which is English Second Language.
Yep.
To learn English. And I think the hardest thing during that time was, having an accent at that time, learning the language, not being able to communicate with my peers, some kids, making fun of, my accent and stuff like that. And just I think the communication, not being able to say what I wanted to say, in school.
Right. It was a little bit of frustration. And after you finished your ESL classes, your English as a second language class, how was it then? Was it easier for you, or did you still experience some of those animosities from other kids?
Well, the area around here is fairly diverse, in terms of people from all over the world and people first-generation immigrants. I mean, there were people that stuff like you have a different first and last name, so making fun of your name, which is one of those kids where a lot of kids are mean in that sense.
Right.
So I didn't really let stuff like that get to me. I think I still held on to kind of my cultural identity in terms of being Ukrainian. So I still speak with my grandparents and my parents in Ukrainian. even though obviously I know English and they know English, to kind of retain the language. But after that, I think kids and teachers and everyone else were fairly welcoming in terms of me being a part of, the class, the general community.
Right. Once you went through grade school and then high school, how was your path towards your personal American dream? How did you find your American dream? What was the journey you embarked on after your basic schooling in the United States?
So I went to college. I went to Rutgers University for criminal justice, which is obviously I don't do criminal justice or not in the field. I'm in digital marketing and founded an agency and worked with a bunch of Fortune 500 companies. But the campus I went to is one of the most diverse immigrant campuses in the country. So I think there were people from like 100 nations represented, a lot of international students and that kind of thing. So I went to school for that. And then after school, I graduated in 2007, 2008 when the economy crashed, which obviously affected the United States and jobs and hiring. And I couldn't find anything within criminal justice because there was a hiring freeze in terms of government roles.
Right.
So I was kind of like down and depressed. And then a friend presented an opportunity for me to take the time, like a month or two, and learn some basic digital marketing things and start helping him with his business, which I did. And then it started from there. So I think the internet itself, I mean, we take the internet for granted in the United States. A lot of places in the world don't have internet or freely accessible internet.
Right.
So I think that was a key, and and the climate itself. So a lot of networking opportunities, a lot of opportunities to learn and kind of grow and work for U.S. companies to basically get me to where I am now. Obviously, I'm still growing, but in terms of some of the things I wanted to achieve, I think I'm in a good place.
And you not only worked for your friend at the time and Fortune 500 companies, you also decided to become an immigrant entrepreneur, basically. So how did you embark on that path? What made you do this? Did you just see the opportunity, or did you want to live a more flexible lifestyle? What brought you into being an immigrant entrepreneur in the digital marketing field?
I think all of that, and I think the beauty in digital marketing is, unless you're meeting with a client, you can be anywhere in the world with an internet connection and still get your job or whatever you're doing in terms of working on campaigns or with clients done. Mm-hmm. So basically, I worked for a company called LexisNexis after I got the opportunity to get into digital marketing. It's in New Jersey. It's a global company, but the office that I was in was in New Jersey, and a lot of people were leaving and starting their own businesses and going to other companies. Right. And I was just as smart as these people, and then I saw that I don't necessarily want to be in a corporate structure, kind of climbing the corporate ladder. So I wanted to be more in control of my own destiny. Right. And I'm constantly learning and networking and speaking and producing content. So I kind of left like building my brand up to me. And I kind of just took the step in 2012 to just do some of the basic things first, like opening an LLC and how to, do that in terms of legalities of paying taxes in the United States, in the state that you form the business, buying the domain, creating the website. So kind of just the framework, and kind of jumped into it and then started, working and picking up clients, hiring people, consulting, and then the rest is pretty much history.
Very good, very good. So you're still running your personal own business, your LLC. You're running now your podcast, which is called the Digital Savage Experience Podcast. What is your podcast about, Roman?
So at first, it was just me talking about my experiences in digital marketing, providing advice, talking about I'm also a foster parent. So my journey as a foster parent. And about 2.5 months ago, I incorporated interviews of people basically telling where they started in terms of their career, their life to get to where they are now, some of the things they've experienced like roadblocks or tough times, right, and how they got over them, things that motivate them, business advice, things that they can leave with the audience. So it's focusing on business, inspiration, motivation, and basically one's life and the journey to where they started and how they got to where they are now.
That sounds very interesting, especially for fellow immigrants who are trying to set up a business in the United States and who are looking not only for basic advice, but for advice from a fellow immigrant who had to overcome some roadblocks, as you had, not only as a child, but in growing your business. So I would recommend our listeners check out Roman's podcast, the Digital Savage Experience podcast, if you're interested in learning from a fellow immigrant what steps you need to take to set up a business, how you keep your motivation up, and just carve out a good life for yourself in the United States. Roman, as a last question for today, do you have one piece of advice for a fellow immigrant who is in the integration phase of the American dream, who just landed here, is super enthusiastic, and wants to go and conquer the world? What would you suggest they do first, or they keep continuously on their journey to their personal American dream?
I think find a good group of people to surround yourself with, either personal, like if you already have friends, or go out or join like a site, let's say meetup.com, in terms of finding a group of people and something that you may be interested in, a career, or people that you want to network in. Because a lot of the time, a lot of the opportunities you get are from the people around you, your friends, your acquaintances, people you meet networking. So surround yourself with a strong tribe of people that can basically help you through some of the stuff that you may be going through. Because if you land here with nothing and you don't know, maybe you don't know the language, maybe you don't know anything else, figuring out people that can help you, that can point you in the right direction and save you a lot of time and energy to get to where you want to get.
All right. Wonderful. That's a great advice. That's also something I personally did when I came here and ended up in an area that was more rural than urban. The next larger city was like 30 miles or, 45 kilometers away. So find people you feel comfortable with, find people who challenge you sometimes, be around people who are supportive. What I tell friends and fellow immigrants, steer clear from people who are just negative towards you. You don't need those people in your life unless it is something that you hear continuously. So maybe that's a point where you can reflect and see if there is a point that you can change yourself. Otherwise, finding a good support system, a good support group, start with your family, friends, and reach out. I mean, I found a lot of supportive immigrant groups in the spiritual, religious environment, if that is up to your taste, or even if you are looking for business opportunities, check out if there is a chamber of commerce that is connecting cultures, all kinds of things. And like you mentioned, Roman, a lot of these things are here in the United States, something you can find online on the internet, as we are really in the fortunate spot of having internet access readily available, be it in our home or through hotspots at your local restaurant, coffee shop, or the library. So thank you so much for your advice, Roman.
It's my pleasure.
Check into Roman's podcast. Listen to what he has to say. Thank you so much, Roman. Thank you to our listeners of The Immigrant Show. If you want to catch up on The Immigrant Show and tune into what other immigrants share about their integration and American dream, or you just want to check in with one of our guest experts on integration-related topics, please subscribe to the podcast. Thank you so much. I hope to have you on the show soon. Thank you. If you want to catch up on The Immigrant Show and tune in to what other immigrants share about their integration and American dream, or want to check in with one of our guest experts on integration-related topics, head over to our website, immigrantshow.com. If you want to share your story, get in touch with us through the contact form on immigrantshow.com. We'd love to have you back for our next show as a listener and maybe even as a guest. Until then, all the best and go get your American dream.